ladies and gentlemen, we've got, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be so loud. We've got lots of folks with tons of different committees going on, but we're really proud today to get a very special presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Representative Tim Fleming to introduce these folks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. We appreciate y'all's time this afternoon. We know there's a lot of different committee meetings and hearings going on, and I think y'all will be really impressed with the presentation you'll see. So it's my honor to be here before y'all today to introduce to y'all Archer Aviation. They are coming to my house, District 114 in Covington, Georgia. They are currently in the process of constructing a 400,000 square foot facility where they will be building this aircraft y'all see on the screen right here, which is the Midnight. It is electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft for on-demand ride shares in the sky. We're excited about them coming to Covington. More importantly, we're excited about them coming to Georgia. Their investment is going to be around $118 million, and they'll employ a little over 1,000 Georgians in Covington. So look forward to the presentation. This is a really cool product, a really great company, and it'll be really great partners to our community. And hopefully next year at this time, we can get the committee down and hopefully take a tour. We'd love to host y'all in Covington, Georgia. But this time, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I'd like to introduce, it's going to be Ms. Tasha Perkins from Archer and Mr. Glenn Burks that would be running the show today. So thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
And if you'll take the podium and tell us, I guess, Georgia Jetson kind of stuff here, which is really, really exciting. And I had no idea we were this far along. And you have the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. So maybe a quick intro. My name is Tasha Perkins. I'm the Chief People and Partnership Officer at Archer. I've been with the company for 3 years, so helped kind of start and scale the company, and we'll be continuing to scale here in Covington and reach the thousands of workforce that we're hoping for here. So, Glenn?
I'm Glenn Burks. I'm the Vice President of Manufacturing for Archer. I led the site selection effort, which yielded Covington. Covington should stand very proud relative to Georgia. It was the last site out of 260 that were submitted for selection. Excited to share capability, but also our vision.
Great. So we'd like to start with a little video because I think it's an excellent summary of the vision for the company. And then we'll just go through a quick things so we can then take questions. Let's see. Uh-oh. Any ideas maybe how to play this? Gonna play. You click that link. That's what happened to me. Okay. Unfortunately, we'll just skip this video here, but maybe we can send it along so you all can see afterwards. So essentially, you said the Jetsons. I think another way of referring to it is Uber of the skies or an air taxi. That's essentially what this is. But Archer is building a fully electric, battery-operated, vertical takeoff and landing aircraft that we will be operating in 2025 as an air taxi service. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I'm sure all of you have been in a situation where you only have 20 miles to go, but it's going to take you 90 minutes. And it's probably when you have a committee meeting or your son's tournament soccer game or something that you just absolutely cannot miss. And today, there's not another option. I personally, over the past couple years, have spent a ton of time in the area. And last summer, I brought my family here, enrolled my kids in camp in Dunwoody, had meetings in Athens, Atlanta, and Covington, and I felt even that pain of trying to get between those places in any reasonable amount of time. So I think you've all felt that. Archer is planning to solve that by offering an alternative as an electric, fully sustainable option that can serve as an air taxi service, Uber of the skies. The aircraft, our production aircraft, is called Midnight. This is the vehicle that we will be producing in Covington. This aircraft holds 4 passengers plus a pilot. So it is very much like a flying car. You'll hear people refer to it as that. Although it can go up to 100 miles, it is meant for really 20 to 50 mile trips. And that's because it's optimized so that when we're doing those trips, we only have to charge for 10 minutes and we can do rapid trips back and forth, which is a good economic model. The other reason is because all of the data that we've collected points to that range as really the pain point range for where we can solve a lot of these congestion problems. So for those two reasons, that's really the optimized range that we're looking at. The airplane can go up to 150 miles per hour. So you can think of a route that would take you that 90 minutes. It can take you 5 to 10 minutes in getting in an Archer. So it's going to solve that problem. From a safety perspective, it has the same safety as a commercial airliner, so we are certifying it with the FAA, which is really the main holdup for us being able to actually go into mass production. We'll be waiting on that type certification, and Glenn can talk to some of those questions as well. And then from a noise perspective, which of course everyone always wants to know, is this going to be something that's going to fly over our city and we're going to be frustrated with? No, the noise is much, much lower than a helicopter. When it's in the skies, it's referred to as kind of like a refrigerator motor noise. It's very challenging to hear it. When it's on the ground starting, I would kind of say it's even quieter than a generator. We've been in situations where we actually hosted an event and we had a generator running something else on the side and no one realized that the plane had taken off. So that just kind of gives you a perspective of the noise. Glenn, you want to talk a little bit about the technical side?
Yeah, this slide here is really to give you a visual, and we talked about safety. Whenever you look at helicopters, which are traditionally servicing, I would say, point A to point B, small range missions today, they're oftentimes constrained by noise pollution that Tasha just hit on, but also the safety that's associated with it. When you look at a traditional helicopter, you start dealing with a lot of flight safety or flight critical parts, safety critical parts with the main rotor or the tail rotor. Either one of those losses are full catastrophic. It has the ability to auto-rotate down in an engine loss, but main rotor or tail rotor loss, it's fully catastrophic for that aircraft. When you start looking at Archer, we've built in so much redundancy, both in our software system, but also in battery channels, to where you're able to lose. It's a 12 motor, 6 forward and 6 aft motors. All 12 are utilized as it takes off in a vertical configuration. And then as it reaches forward cruise at 70 knots, the forward motors start to tilt down. The aft motors lock into place to eliminate or reduce drag. And so you're only operating on the forward 6 motors at forward cruise once it's wing-borne. With that being said, you can lose up to 8 of the 12 motors with no issues or impact to the mission. Each of the 6 battery packs that service this engine are on 6 separate channels. So if you do lose a battery channel, 2 battery channels, 3 battery channels, it has no impact to your safety, ride safety, to be able to safely land the aircraft back to the ground. The other aspect too is if you do lose an electric engine, our center of gravity, of course, is important in forward flight. So our channels are broken up to where the forward right-hand tilter on the front right-hand of the aircraft and the aft lifter on the aft left-hand side are on one channel. So the channels are staged. That way, if you have to take a channel offline, your center of gravity is not changing through weight disbursement. It's also, if you do happen to lose an electric engine, you don't lose access to the battery charge. So if you're running on a lower state of charge, you still have access to that charge without it disrupting the engine operational aspect. So this really starts to highlight the redundancy that's built into the aircraft. You can see the 6 separate channels and how they're broken down in different colors, the blue, red, green, and then how each of those channels go to coinciding aft and forward motor.
Great. So a little bit more about the company. We are headquartered in San Jose, California. As we mentioned, we'll be building our manufacturing site here in Covington, or we are building. You're going to get to see that progress today. We raised over $1 billion in capital back when the company went public in 2021. We are a publicly traded company, but we also have over $3 billion in backlog already. So we have a purchase order from United Airlines. We have a purchase order from Air Chateau, which is in the Middle East. And we also have a purchase order from Indigo in India. So we are actively creating a backlog and will very likely have more demands than airplanes in our first early years, but doing very well. We have over 700 employees now. Majority of those are based in California, but we actually will be, at the end of this year, relocating about 40 to 50 of them here to Covington as sort of the founding base, and then we'll hire in from there. So that's going to be our strategy. Our timeline quickly, I mentioned certification. We are dependent on getting certified from the FAA. That is something we expect to get early in 2025. At that point, we would then be able to launch our operations. In the early years, what you're going to see is what we call trunk routes. Trunk routes is where you go from city center to airport. And that's one reason that we're partnering with airlines. So you could imagine going from Manhattan to Newark, as an example. That's one of the cities we've launched. Or downtown Chicago to O'Hare. So those are two cities that we've already come out and announced in partnership with United that we will be launching there. That's going to be in the early days. In the later days, you'll probably see more of the aerial rideshare services for tourist reasons, or emergency services, or cargo. There's many different options there. But you could see a scenario where we're flying people to the Braves stadium, as an example. And we've actually had active conversations with the Braves. So these are things that we are pursuing, although they're slightly further out. I talked about the two revenue streams, one selling direct to the airlines. And when we sell direct to the airlines, it will likely be a service for them that they will tack on. So you go to Delta to book your flight, and it's going to say, hey, do you want to be picked up in city center to bring you to the airport? That's an example. And then we will also own and operate our own rideshare routes, as an example, in the later years, as I mentioned. Just a few more things. The first myth or misconception when people hear about Archer is that this is a product for the wealthy. And that is absolutely not true. It is not the vision of the company. And we feel very strongly that this has to be something that's available to the broad population. How are we going to do that? Well, as I mentioned before, when we're looking at these rapid trips that only take 5 to 10 minutes, we can do lots more trips than an average rideshare service. We also can get 4 paying passengers versus today when you get an Uber, as an example, you're splitting it across you 4 for the same seat price. So we will likely be double the seat price, but we'll have 4 passengers and lots of trips. That makes it very economically viable for us and available for the broad population at a reasonable price. Talked about United Airlines, so I'm going to skip that, and then we'll talk about the details of Covington.
This is the exciting part because this is where it starts shifting from conceptual design to reality as we go into an execution phase. 2024 is an execution year for Archer where we start transitioning from the design to actually starting to build our product. We have 3 aircraft currently operating in California. This year we'll be building all of our flight test aircraft in California that we'll use for certification credit with the FAA. As we finish those 6 aircraft, then we'll start doing the tooling, equipment, and resource transitions to Covington to start standing up production operations. With that being said, what you see here on the screen is a rendering of our facility here in Covington. It's an on-airport facility that's on 96 acres. It's designed and planned to be a 2-phase operation. Phase 1 is what we're currently building right now, which gives us the 400,000 square feet that Representative Fleming mentioned earlier. This gives us the capacity from production standpoint to produce 650 aircraft annually. We have a planned phase 2 expansion in this to where we achieve a capacity for 2,300 aircraft annually. So phase 1, it will be right around 400,000 square feet. Phase 2 will be right at 1 million square feet. Everything that we've done from the state incentives is all based off of a phase 1 production. We really want to make sure that we over-deliver on any commitments that we've made. So the 1,000 jobs that we've committed to creating, the $118 million capital investment, are all based on achieving the phase 1 completion rate of 650. Anything as we go into phase 2 and start producing the thousands of aircraft, our job creation gets over 3,000 jobs created every year. But everything that we wanted to do up front was based off the phase 1. It's on airport footprint, which was something that was very important to us as we start production. Oftentimes we get asked, if you have a vertical takeoff aircraft, why do you need to be on airport? While it does have the ability to do vertical takeoff and landing, and that will be the bulk of the missions, it also can take off conventionally and land conventionally like a traditional aircraft. The energy consumption is actually much lower if you're taking off conventionally and landing conventionally because you're using the most power in a vertical configuration. It also is another safety aspect that if there is any issues with say the afterlifters being able to land vertically, you can stay in a traditional or a conventional airplane mode and then land at the closest regional airport. The size of the facility, of course, is on the 96 acres. We have a video. I don't know if it'll play. Hopefully it will, but if it doesn't, I'll give you a high level. We've spent the last year really focusing on the grading. Elevation change was a huge challenge for us on this footprint. We had to move about 450,000 cubic yards of dirt to get it leveled out. So it's taken us some time to get earthwork complete. Earthwork is about a third of the project cost. Project cost is right at $65 million. And we have about $23 million in earthwork and utilities being buried. With that being said, we've transitioned past that point. We're pouring foundations currently. We've already completed the flight operations building, which is the building in the background. This is the building that as the aircraft gets completed and assembled in the main assembly building, we go out to flight operations. We do all of our compass swing. We do all of the weight and balance. We do a restrained ground velum. We do a company flight velum, which tests the aircraft through all of its flight paces, both as a traditional aircraft as well as vertical takeoff configuration. We're currently pouring the foundations for the main assembly building, and we've made, we started on the western corner of that facility, and we've poured 2 pours so far. It'll take about 10 pours to finish that whole facility. We're doing about 35,000 square feet per pour, so we have about 70,000 square feet in the main assembly building already complete. I don't know if it'll play here, but if you receive the presentation, you should be able to play it. It's drone footage, so it's going to give you a drone video footage of the facility. It also will give you a bird's eye view of all the activity that's happening. You'll be able to see the foundations going down. You'll see the foundations complete. The flat building, and just kind of orienting, is in the top right-hand corner. The production building is on kind of the western side of the screen there. You can see the footprint or outlay of the production building with the 2 pads complete on the top section. With that being said, we'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, for any questions you may have.
Oh gosh, yeah, everybody's lighting up here. We'll go with Representative Byrd. Are you number 1?
No.
Teddy? Please.
I was looking forward to Representative Bird's question. It's usually pretty interesting. Thank you for this presentation today. I think this is probably the most exciting thing I've heard all day. And I'm curious to, when you go out to your sites, will this require a special landing pad? I mean, you just can't drop in the Publix parking lot. So what type of work is having to be done in the outer perimeter to the areas that you want to serve? And will you have to have multiple landing locations? How is that going to work?
Yes, a great point at the infrastructure. So in the early days, our plan is to do 2 things. One is use existing infrastructure helipads that already exist. So in the 2 cities that we've chosen, those already exist, so we just have to have licensing to be able to land there. But we're also partnering with other infrastructure companies that do build parking garages. To your point about parking garages, all we need is 50 meters of wingspan and charging infrastructure, and the vehicle can actually land there. So there's not much more to it than that. So if you kind of think from that perspective, you could take a parking structure and outfit the top, as an example, where mostly people don't always park. And you could have the, what we call vertiport there, which will be where you would check in and where the airplane would land and stuff like that. And we're essentially the vertiport where you would check in, building modular systems where we could basically move these around or put them wherever we would need to be to outfit a parking garage. So that's where a lot of our partnerships will come into play. So we won't personally be building the infrastructure solely by ourselves.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think just adding to that, we are so close to this every day that we forget that everyone else hasn't maybe been on this journey with us. And so whenever we're talking about the infrastructure pieces that Tasha just hit on, one of the things that allows us to be successful in this area is the weight of our vehicle. The aircraft weighs right around 6,500 pounds, so it's very similar to one of the SUVs. So any of the infrastructure that already exists today can handle the aircraft. It may be intimidating by its size, but from a weight standpoint, it's all composite aircraft. Sizing the aircraft, it's 47 foot tip to tip from the wing, and then 30 foot nose to tail relative to sizing, and then 6,500 square feet. 6,500 pounds. I'm still thinking about the site. I'm so excited about coming.
Representative Gladden?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Being a resident of Augusta, Georgia, would like to make sure that I extend the offer that you consider your expansion, speaking prophetically, that you would extend that to Augusta, make that consideration for us, because we do have a regional airport in the area that would like to grow. But also during the time of the Masters tournament, we also always experience those pains of trying to get lots of people into small spaces. And our airport struggles through trying to move people in large capacity from one space to another, from one side of town to another, in large volume. And this seems to be a very workable, feasible type of process. Now, I don't speak for Augusta National at all, and on the record, I'm letting you know that I don't. But it certainly does seem like a feasible option that they may even be willing to consider for their talent when they're trying to move them in and out of the city very, very quickly. But I like the idea. I will put that on the record, that I like the idea and support that. So would love to see you propose that in the future. Thank you very much for bringing this.
Yeah, just following up real quick on your comment, we actually stay very close to the team in Augusta. We've done a couple conferences there in Augusta just on general aviation airport capabilities. We actually were just asked to partner with GDOT at an upcoming event there as well. So Augusta definitely is on the radar based off of its proximity to the Atlanta base.
Thank you.
Solomon, you number 8?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for bringing this to Georgia. I think it's going to help the economic development in Georgia, and it's the sort of direction that we want to be headed. I was just curious, those aircraft, are they helicopters or airplane?
Yeah, so the classification. Yeah, the classification right now is a mixed classification. So that was one of the first questions the FAA had to answer. How are they going to certify the aircraft? Are they going to do it under traditional helicopter certification? Are they going to do it under general aircraft certification? Right now, we'll operate the aircraft under Part 21, which is general aircraft. Everything that we're doing relative to pilot training, they're creating a unique classification for all the pilot training that goes into flying and operating the aircraft. So it's kind of a hybrid. It's a mix of traditional automotive that goes from combustion and battery together. Ours is all electric, but it's a mix in aircraft classifications.
And the reason I ask, from a safety standpoint, and Jenny Lady mentioned that all they needed was 50 meters to land. And I was just, blown away by that, because I know helicopters is sort of aircraft that you can land within that short distance. And, it's just interesting to see.
Yeah, the footprint that Tosh had mentioned, the route that we've already announced with United is leveraging existing helicopter locations that already exist in Manhattan. So there's no change in operational cadence, no change in air traffic patterns or paths. We would just take our technology and introduce it into an existing helicopter construct. As you start getting closer to city centers, the noise becomes a constraint for helicopters operating in those areas. So this will allow us to open our door to be able to penetrate markets that they're currently restricted from.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Number 16, Madam Mayor.
I was concerned too. Do you have to have this approved by, take for instance, the Savannah Airport, where you have many flights coming in, but you may have a helicopter pad or a small company sitting in another section? Do you have to have any kind of qualifications, not qualifications, what you call them, licensing and all of that? To
Yeah, I
come
mean, from
into a major airport, but we have like Signature on the side. Would you fit into the Signature kind of parking?
Yeah, absolutely. The FAA would oversee all of our vertiport locations relative to specs, build out, even building out our facility here. We've had to partner a lot with Georgia Department of Transportation, which is the forward face of the FAA in Georgia, on all of our 7460 permittings, classifications, all the agreements that we have for runway access, taxiway connectors. We're partnering with them on. They have to go approved. With that being said, relative to actually taking the aircraft into a hover and then moving into forward flight, it'd be very traditional to an existing helicopter. You would just radio into local ATC, let them know that you're moving in and where you're located, and then you would transition into existing traffic flow.
Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chairman?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd be remiss. My friend Sarah Phillips is here, and we all have great economic development people. I know I'm blessed in Bartow County, but I met Sarah years ago, and I can say she is one of the smartest, hardest working people I have ever been around, and I appreciate her job there in Newton County. So thank you for being here with us. Thank you for representing the Georgia Economic Developers Association. My question to you guys is, I love everything I see and hear about Archer, and since this is still such a new technology in many ways, as this becomes more common, there's going to be more of these potentially in the air. And so how do you, I guess, take into account for the higher traffic volume potential that this will bring, and what kind of things should, well, and I guess it's really more of a federal issue as far as FFA regulation, but I'm just thinking about more of these being out there and adding to the volume of what's in the sky already, which is, I know, vast, but still the safety concerns of all the additional traffic, I guess. Does that make sense?
It does. First, I want to respond to your Sarah Phillips comment. When we went through the site selection process, I mentioned earlier, I received 260 locations across 28 states of interest. And when we down selected and received the top 10, the EDC team in Newton County was one of the large reasons that we selected Georgia. Standing up a brand new business, standing up a new aircraft design, standing up new infrastructure, all in parallel, there's a lot of difficult problems to solve. And I was confident from day one that regardless of how difficult the problems were, I felt like I had a partner within the community that we could figure it out and work together to find a solution that's beneficial for everyone. So echo your comments, very, very passionate about that community and specifically the work that she's done in bringing us here. To answer your question specifically, the FAA will actually throttle operation volumes. So in the early stages, it'll be very similar to a crawl, walk, run strategy. They will limit how many aircraft will forward deploy in the early stages. We don't know what that number will be. Is it 5 aircraft? Is it 100 aircraft? Is it 200 aircraft? But they will likely limit aircraft operating in the region to see what type of air traffic pattern disruptions are occurring, and then make sure that we're able to sustain and mature and kind of vet out any integration issues before they start increasing that operational volume. We've taken this into account with our launch cities. As Tasha mentioned, we're launching from Newark to Manhattan. We're launching from downtown Chicago to O'Hare. We'll launch in a similar construct with trunk routes across the U.S. to have multiple operation locations in the early stages to build. Our production facility is also gated off this based off our annual operating plan, takes into this account. So when we launch in the early stages, we'll be launching, rate of 50 per year. Then we'll grow into a rate of 125, 250, 500, 650. So we stay in 7 years of planned rate changes to be able to start meeting that demand, knowing that we won't start right out of the gate, with hundreds of aircraft delivered because there's not a market we could go deploy those in.
Okay. Representative Persinger?
I'll wait.
Okay. Representative Yerda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is exciting and welcome to Georgia. You mentioned to begin with maybe fleet sales and United. Do you eventually plan to market to the general public, or are you going to do that immediately?
Yes, our vision is we would rather the business be about 70% aerial rideshare to the general public, 30% potentially direct sales. It'll take us a while to get to that point simply because we want the revenue from the sales to the airlines to be able to obviously produce, own, and operate our own vehicles. But yes, our vision is, I would say probably the 2028 timeframe is where you'll see more of that. The trunk routes are going to be in those kind of first 2 to 3 years.
Okay. One follow-up?
Yes, sir.
The electric motors, are they similar in fashion to an EV motor that's in a vehicle, or more horsepower, or what?
Yeah, so to answer that question, I give you a high-level overview of our make versus buy strategy within the company. As I mentioned, all the challenges that you have starting a business, new design. We're really focused on our core IP differentiators as make items, internally sourcing and internally manufacturing. And then relative to the things that are not, I would say, fundamental or core IP, leveraging existing aerospace suppliers that are already certified, already in the market. That way it limits our cash outlay relative to CapEx stand-up and also allows us to focus on the differentiators. With that being said, the electric engines and the battery are our core IP. Okay. So those are internal make items. Those will be made here at the Covington facility as well. The battery is very similar to a traditional automotive battery. It's a 23 kilowatt hour battery. There's 6 packs per aircraft. Relative to the sizing, they're about 300 pounds per battery. Electric engines, we've done a lot. There's not an electric engine that exists today that supports our technical needs. So we've really redesigned everything from scratch. Relative to sizing, they're about 65 to 75 pounds, the electric engine itself, in weight, and about, I would say, a little over, right around a foot, 12 to 14 inches in diameter.
Wow. Thank you.
Representative Gladney, did you have another?
First, can you hear me?
Yes.
Is there a vocational component to your manufacturing program? I know that at Standard Aero, where we are in Augusta, sometimes they have a problem maintaining workforce, not having enough employee staffing to just keep the aircraft, and they don't manufacture them there, they just maintain the mechanics of them. Is there that component to your facility at all? How does that work? Where's your pipeline come from?
Yeah, so this is a two-pronged question. This is where Tasha eats, sleeps, and breathes within the business. The piece that I'll highlight real quick, relative from a certification, there's not a certification requirement for the manufacturing of the product. There is a production certificate that we have to get from the FAA after we have our type design certificate, which authorizes our facility to produce aircraft that can be delivered for commercial utilization. With that being said, as we start delivering aircraft and have an airworthiness attached to the aircraft, we'll stand up a Part 145 repair station on site, which will be reworking parts that are returned either from United deliveries, need to be rework or spares, create a life cycle. That Part 145 repair station will require an A&P certification. It's an FAA-controlled program, but for the traditional manufacturing of the aircraft, one does not exist.
Yeah, so we, from the very beginning, have partnered with a number, obviously Quick Start, but the technical colleges have played a major piece in already developing our pipeline and our training for the manufacturing facility, which right now is primarily in California, as we discussed. But in late this year, early next, we'll be moving those employees, as I mentioned. And our focus has been, how can we build a program with Archer folks actually doing the facilitating or teaching at some of the technical colleges, and be able to actually build a pipeline coming through those pieces to then feed into the manufacturing. So it's very early stages, but they've already played such an instrumental role that we feel confident we'll be able to take what we've built and then start feeding and implementing it in the schools here.
Just adding on to that as well, in the early stages, we've really focused on people with aerospace background and experience, really being the foundation of the core. As we start increasing our headcount, we'll start looking at the Archer-specific pipelines that Tasha's just mentioned, as well as partnering with A&P schools. I know Tasha and the team have partnered with AIM, which is a Georgia-based A&P school here as well, as a pipeline into our facility. We've actually hired some of our technicians here from Georgia already. They're working in California, temporarily building the aircraft there. So we're really trying to plant as much roots within the community from the very beginning.
I've got a few questions. The flight ceiling, how does that work? And does it integrate with artificial intelligence? Any ideas how that's going to be factored in? I mean, I'm sure you're not going to fly up there with the 30,000 foot.
Yeah, no oxygen's required for the flights. We'll traditionally be operating right around 2,500 feet. So it's much lower than traditional aircraft are operating, which also kind of eases the traffic congestion concerns that you're trying to integrate with existing traffic. There's not aircraft operating in that range outside of private aircraft coming in. A Cessna 172 is an example, flying low, but traditionally it would be flying much lower than general aviation aircraft.
Have you run the numbers to see what your cost per ride, for example, might be in Atlanta to the airport? And is there any thought to integrating with TSA?
Yes, on all of those fronts. I think as Tasha mentioned earlier, the ride price is very sensitive to the location. So if you look at the Archer route that we have from Newark to Manhattan, you have to pay landing fees in those areas. So as you start incorporating those costs, it naturally will make the ticket price start to creep up. But also, if you look at the demand in those areas, I think right now Uber from Newark to Manhattan is about $120 to $140 for Uber Black. Our price point will be at or below that same threshold. If you look at markets that don't have landing fees that are tied into the seat ride, it gets into that $3 to $5 per seat mile. So if you start focusing on 10 to 20 mile ranges, you're anywhere from $30 to $100. It will be at a price point that people can use. It may not be a service that people use on a daily basis, but if they're going from Covington to Marietta to catch the Braves, it'll be something that they would want to leverage.
Who's number 6? Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me how many people? I'm sorry. Can you tell us how many people does it hold?
It holds 4 people plus a pilot.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 passengers plus a pilot. And there's room in the back for some carry-on luggage.
Do you ever anticipate not needing a pilot?
Oh, no.
No,
Yeah.
think about that. I'm serious.
Yes. Yes. Actually, on that timeline slide, I cut it a little short for time, but that last box actually says that around 2030, we anticipate working on an autonomous vehicle. So one that will not need a pilot. There are companies out there today that are already working on that. The reason we chose to pilot it first was 1, to build consumer confidence, but 2, there is at least a better chance of getting certified in a reasonable amount of time, where those other companies right now, they'll be working towards a 2030 timeline. So we'd like to start getting revenue and then work on our next gen, which will be an autonomous vehicle.
Incredibly exciting. Anybody else?
Just adding on to that, our flight test aircraft that we're flying today are flown without a pilot. So we have the capability embedded into the technology. It's just a matter of improving that to where you have a path to certification.
Wow. Thank you, Jeff, and we've got another, 17.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
It perked my interest about luggage. How much weight can y'all carry? Because if I want to take my golf clubs, I want to know.
Yeah. So it's designed to hold 1,000 pounds of payload, which if you start adding it up, 4 passengers, a pilot, that's not much luggage, maybe not your golf clubs as well. However, with that being said, the aircraft can be reconfigured to meet whatever standards you need it to meet for those 1,000 pounds. So let's say you wanted the 2 passengers with your golf clubs. You could do that as an example. And also, as we work on our next gen, that's obviously the first thing that we're working on, is carrying more payload.
Thank you.
To the gentleman from Statesboro, he wants to be a dealer, I think, so go right ahead.
I know, I would love that. So I came in a little bit late and have a very exciting presentation, obviously, but I have a question because with the luggage, it kind of reminded me. So if me and my wife or somebody, could we bring a dog as well? Do you allow your dog to go in there, or is there limits for that, or can you not do it or not allow it?
Yeah, we'll follow a traditional commercial airline operation. So everything we're certifying to will have the same capabilities. I would say the differences are just payload. So the payload trade-offs that you would have, it may impact your seat price because you may be taken up, depending on the size of the dog, it may need its own seat. People have gotten carried away with service animals now. I've seen videos recently of, ponies on airplanes. So it just depends on the size.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good question. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank Jeff Hamill for getting us this thing set up. It's extremely exciting, and it's a good day and a good time to be a Georgian. Thank you. We're adjourned.